Welcome back. Joining me now via Zoom, and it's good to have him after a very long time. I'd like to welcome Angelo Fick, political analyst. Angelo, assalamu alaikum. Good to have you back. Thank you so much for joining us.
Walaikum salam to you and to your viewers.
Angelo, there's been, of course, four fracasses between the ANC and the DA in this GNU. I don't know about you, but this kind of feels that it's going to be deepening these cracks even wider, given that it's actually a sacking of a deputy minister. I just wanted to get your take on it with regards to the events that had happened last week, Thursday.
So I think this is a long-standing tension between Cyril Ramaphosa and the Democratic Alliance going back a year to when they first started negotiating and settling on what this GNU coalition should look like. Let's not forget that the Democratic Alliance wanted particular positions and they wanted to silo off the departments for those positions. And it was Cyril Ramaphosa who had to remind them that constitutionally that wasn't possible. The president appoints cabinet and therefore has the right to remove people from cabinet. What we've seen here is at the beginning of this year in February, we had the DA Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry propose travel to the United States. And according to the Democratic Alliance, it was as the head of the party in the Eastern Cape. The presidency did not respond to the request for permission to travel by a deputy minister. The deputy minister traveled anyway, and now Cyril Ramaphosa is suggesting that because this travel was done unapproved, this was a violation of the Executive Code of Conduct Handbook, and as a result, he's going to remove and have removed the deputy minister. The question that I think many people have about this is why Mr. Whitfield felt the need to continue to travel, not having permission, and why it is that the leader of the Democratic Alliance is suggesting a 48-hour deadline for a reversal or whatever it was that they wanted from Mr. Ramaphosa, given that they've already been told a year ago cabinet positions are presidential preferences. And, appoint and disappoint, to use the terms of the Zuma years, is precisely what the Constitution allows the president.
Angelo, and this is the thing, isn't it? I don't know whether the DA actually understands presidential appointments, presidential prerogatives, because at the end, these cabinet ministers are serving at the behest of the President of the Republic. But it kind of feels like the DA is acting as some sort of and I want to use this word very carefully, some sort of a rogue cabinet minister, so they can go wherever they want, do whatever they want. And it kind of feels that they do not want to have that sense of impunity to them. Is that something, I beg your pardon, that you're sensing right now, given this Andrew Whitfield debacle that is happening?
So I think they fully understand exactly what the roles are. They were reminded of this a year ago in a formal letter from President Ramaphosa about how this happens. I don't think they have any confusion. I think they have the kinds of legal minds on board in the federal structures of the Democratic Alliance that will have reminded them of what the possibilities are. This is politics being played at precisely the level that they want it to be played. They're now positioning this as it's actually about who the president removes from cabinet. And they've mentioned two people that they think should be removed based on corruption allegations or implication in inappropriate appointments to setters, rather than simply inappropriate travel. When asked whether there was a precedent for this, Mr. Ramaphosa reminded them that Winnie Madikizela Mandela had been fired from cabinet in the 90s for defying precisely getting permission to travel as the deputy minister at the time. And in 2007, somebody else had been fired. So there is precedent for this. I think their argument is the president seems to be quite lenient when it comes to serious allegations and seems quite harsh when it comes to travel permission violations. Whether or not they have a point is not at issue here. The letter of the law was followed. The letter of the rules were followed. And so this is really, I think, the Democratic Alliance thinking they cannot flank Cyril Ramaphosa and finding themselves outflanked by the man who, after all, is a massively good negotiator precisely because this is the man who negotiated the National Party out of power. So I suspect that this is the Democratic Alliance wanting to now play by a specific set of rules, because even in the response from John Steenhuisen in their statement is they seem to be the only party serious about governing South Africa free of corruption. That's a political spin on a set of rules that were applied to, or was applied to their particular candidate that they may be very unhappy with.
Angelo, is are the DA acting like this sort of toddler throwing their toys, but they want to be in mommy and daddy's house? The reason why I'm saying that is because they said, well, if you want us out of the GNU, fire us, but they're also saying, oh, we're going to boycott the national dialogue, number one. We're going to vote against any budget that's presented by the ANC. And number two, they, of course, want these three ministers to be axed, Nabuhle Nkabane, David Mahlobo, and, of course, Tembi Samalane. The ANC is not going to make it easy for them, isn't it? Because, I mean, these demands right over here, surely, if not all, maybe none of them are actually going to be realized by the ANC or actually accomplished by the ANC just to satisfy one GNU partner.
Well, it's not just any GNU partner. This is the partner that pushes them over the 60%, where they are comfortable inside the African National Congress, that they have a clear majority. I think both of the parties want the other one to leave. The Democratic Alliance wants the ANC to kick them out of the GNU so they can say, see, these people are not serious about coalition. The ANC wants the DA to walk out. So this feels like a really bad marriage where neither of the two parties wants the talak. They want the other party to kick them out of the house. And I suspect that this will drag on for a few more years. My suspicion is that the Democratic Alliance likes being in power, likes being in those positions, precisely because they can then use that to claim in 2029 that they've been in government before and voters should trust them. The ANC wants them inside the coalition so that whatever collective responsibility is held for any failures between now and 2029 will be laid at both of the two largest parties. The MK party, of course, not in this conversation, but I think should be here, would want the DA to remain inside the GNU coalition, because should the DA leave the coalition, they become the third largest party. The DA takes back its position as official opposition. And there are all sorts of consequences for the MK party's ability to do all sorts of things that it currently wants to do in the National Assembly and in the NCOP. So my sense is this is a tense moment in South African politics, but I don't see it as a deal breaker because so many of the differences between the ANC and the DA before have not resulted in a sundering of the GNU partnership. The Bela bill in the Education Department, signing of which was boycotted by the DA deployed minister into the cabinet, Minister Harube. The issue of compensation, land expropriation without compensation. The agriculture minister did not walk out of his position for that. The relationship on international relations over the bombing of Palestine, that has not been a dissolution of the partnership. What we've in fact seen is while people continue to talk about the ANC as weak in this position as a 40% party, they've taken their position as the senior member of the coalition government very seriously and outmaneuvered the DA on several occasions. One would have thought that at this point, the DA, given the 3, 4, 5 strikes against them on a variety of issues, including the National Health Insurance Bill, would have walked out. It's against all of the policies they profess to their supporters they want. So it's going to be interesting to see whether this axing of a deputy minister for violating travel arrangement rules is that deal breaker. I suspect not. I suspect that this will go back to the clearinghouse. And the Democratic Alliance will use this as a series of recorded incidents for why they stuck with the GNU but don't trust the ANC come the local government elections in 2026 and come the elections in 2029.
Yeah, we were supposed to have, of course, Mahlengi Bengo-Buchiri on the show. Unfortunately, she can't make it due to a current NWC. On that NWC meeting that's happening, Angelo, I mean, yesterday, Fikile Mbalula said that, look, we will not be allowed to be bullied by the DA. President Cyril Ramaphosa will not be told what and what not to do by especially, quote-unquote, deputy ministers. The ANC is going to play the smart, aren't they? You've mentioned it. They want the DA there in this government of national unity. So a common sense rather than just irrationality is going to prevail at this NWC, I beg your pardon, one suspects.
And realpolitik, again, people who go into partnership with the African National Congress in things that are symbolically called the GNU don't have a long-term survival process underway. The National Party went into government. Let's not forget that the last leader of the National Party was incorporated as an ANC member into cabinet. Martinus van Schalkwyk was Minister of Tourism. And where's the National Party now? Nowhere. It's early days yet, a year after this coalition. But I think the Democratic Alliance may have in its head, and in some of its polling, a sense that they are making a significant difference. And with some power players in business We've seen business press suggest that there's market stability because the Democratic Alliance is inside the GNU coalition. This echoes very much what the business press said in the late 1990s. But the player that the business press backed at the time doesn't exist anymore. The Democratic Alliance already has its own existential crisis. It had a decline in voter support in 2021 and in 2019. It had a percentage. It had a literal decline in the number of voters at the last election, even though they grew in percentage because of the lower turnout. And so I think the Democratic Alliance must be thinking very carefully about how it's going to negotiate the next 5 years so that come 2029, they don't have an even lower number of actual voters supporting them. And hope for then, if that is the case, a lower turnout for that election. But my sense is that the African National Congress, the MK Party, and other players in Parliament, including the Patriotic Alliance, they will be working very, very hard to get a higher turnout of voters so that their support base in percentage increase and the number of seats they get in the National Assembly and the NCOP increase. So I think the Democratic Alliance has to think about survival in the longer term and may have to think about how that survival is dependent on how they are perceived to have been part of the problem of the 5 years of the 7th administration, rather than as a bulwark against making it even worse. They must remember what has happened to coalition partners like the National Party in the 1990s for saying they will act as a bulwark and a check on ANC excesses. And it turns out the ANC survived, but the National Party didn't. The DA does not want to be in that position, and they may have to balance out whether sitting in the official opposition position for another 5 years is better for the organization's survival, even though it may go against what their funders, what their supporters, and what the business press is telling them is the better position to hold.
Angelo, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
That's Angelo Fick, political analyst, of course. Interesting to see how this is going to end up. After the break, I'm going to be speaking to Saeed Talib. He's a mayor of a village called Turmus Aya in the northeastern part of Ramallah. Of course, we have been seeing violent settler attacks that have been happening in the occupied West Bank. I'll be talking to him after the break.